Governor Andrew Cuomo faces allegations of sexual harassment of 11 women. Local prosecutors will launch a criminal investigation, reigniting calls for Cuomo to resign or be impeached. The findings of a 5-month investigation into allegations of sexual harassment found the governor created a toxic workplace and that his office illegally retaliated against the first accuser. After the allegations surfaced, U.S. President Joe Biden and other prominent Democrats call on him to resign. But in a video statement, Cuomo makes it clear he had no plans to do so and denies he acted inappropriately.
The facts are much different than what has been portrayed. I want you to know directly from me that I never touched anyone inappropriately or made inappropriate sexual advances.
Cuomo says his accusers misinterpreted his words, gestures, and demeanor, insisting his behavior was always intended to convey warmth to the women. The New York State Attorney General says investigators spoke to 179 people whose statements reveal a climate of fear in which Cuomo sexually harassed women, many of them young.
Hello, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Coming up here on Viral, on this program, we talk about Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York. Andrew Cuomo is in serious trouble. He could be the possibility of losing his job or being impeached after allegations of him appropriately touching women in appropriate places. We'll get to the latest as Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York being alleged by a sexual harassment suit. All this and more when Viral starts right now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special edition of Viral. I'm your host, as always, Kendrick Diggs here, as we talk about Governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo, a year ago, was a popular figure with people trying to get tested for COVID. Now, Andrew Cuomo, more news surfaces that he's in the hot seat after he's been inappropriately touching women, staffers, any doctors, you name it. Andrew Cuomo now could be in a position of being impeached in New York due to the fact that the Attorney General, Letitia James, said that Cuomo has incriminating evidence on Cuomo inappropriately touching women. But first things first, join in the conversation using the hashtag Viral here on Connect. Don't forget to subscribe. Subscribing is caring. Tell a friend, call a friend, hit that subscribe button so you won't miss a thing. We talk about New York Governor Andrew Cuomo in serious trouble and could be in the possibility of being impeached sooner rather than later. Well, New York Attorney General Letitia James has some incriminating evidence. Let's get to the latest on how all this with Governor Andrew Cuomo surrounding him with sexual harassment started. This
environment. I feel vindicated. It's been a long day, but I'm proud to be a New Yorker right now.
Charlotte Bennett accused Andrew Cuomo of sexual misconduct, and now authorities documented behavior in a damning report detailing accusations against the governor. She spoke exclusively to CBS News.
He sexually harassed me. I am not confused. It is not confusing. I am living in reality, and it's sad to see that he's not.
The New York State Attorney General's task force spoke to 179 witnesses over the course of 5 months, including the allegations of 11 women, and says the governor broke federal and state laws with a pattern of behavior.
By engaging in unwanted groping, kisses, hugging, and by making inappropriate comments.
The report included new allegations that Cuomo harassed a state trooper on his security detail, saying Cuomo ran his hand or fingers across her stomach, her back, and kissed her on the cheek.
She told us that she felt completely violated.
The report even contained audio from a phone call with Cuomo singing to Bennett the Motown song, Do You Love Me?
Do you love me? Do you really love me? Do you love me?
In his response, Cuomo was defiant and released a taped statement.
I never touched anyone inappropriately or made inappropriate sexual advances. That is just not who I am.
The governor showed a series of photos of him kissing people, which he calls an innocent gesture.
I actually learned it from my mother and from my father. It is meant to convey warmth, nothing more.
As for Bennett, the report says last year, as they discussed her experience as a sexual assault survivor, Cuomo kept repeating, "You were raped and abused and assaulted," making her feel as if he was testing her.
I have heard Charlotte and her lawyer, and I understand what they are saying. But they read into comments that I made and draw inferences that I never meant.
He's trying to justify himself by making me out to be someone who can't tell the difference between sexual harassment and mentorship. And if he's not willing to step down, then we have a responsibility to act and impeach him.
Now, the Attorney General says that her civil investigation is done, but the Albany District Attorney is requesting the report, and it remains to be seen if any of Cuomo's accusers file criminal charges. Live in the studio this morning, we'll send it right back over to you.
Okay, John, thank you very much.
Cuomo released a statement, and let's hear what Governor Cuomo had to say in this video statement right here.
Several months, you have heard a number of complaints brought against me. I called for an independent review, and I said at the beginning I would let the process unfold. I didn't want anyone to say that I interfered. I said I would hold my tongue, and I have, making only limited comments. It has been a hard and a painful period for me and my family, especially as others feed ugly stories to the press. But I cooperated with a review, and I can now finally share the truth. My attorney, who is a non-political former federal prosecutor, has done a response to each allegation, and the facts are much different than what has been portrayed. That document is available on my website. If you are interested, please take the time to read the facts and decide for yourself. First, I want you to know directly from me that I never touched anyone inappropriately or made inappropriate sexual advances. I am 63 years old. I've lived my entire adult life in public view. That is just not who I am. And that's not who I have ever been.
Cuomo pleads his innocence, saying that he is touchy-feeling, but he's trying to be in a kind gesture. Well, when you got a lot of women that's coming out of the woodwork saying that you're being more inappropriate, and you kind of think to yourself, like, well, with the sexual harassment stuff, should he be more cordial and be more polite, not just trying to be touchy-feeling? You know, if it ain't your wife, which the governor was married a couple of times, you know, you don't need to be touching people because people are getting sensitive and stuff. And I think he was trying to be anti-sensitive to their needs, because it's just a public place, not a private place. So I think what's going on with that. Let's hear what you people had to say about Governor Andrew Cuomo in the sexual harassment report that was released by the Attorney General, Letitia James. Take a look.
Those investigations are starting to stack up. As you mentioned, there are now 4 local DAs launching criminal probes into Governor Cuomo's alleged conduct. Right here in Albany, there is one in Westchester County, New York City now, as well as Nassau County, Long Island. To just add a little bit of color from where we are here on the ground in Albany, we have seen, I should say in the air, we've seen a banner circling that says, "The report is in, remove Cuomo now." This is just indicative of a sentiment that is now permeating as we learn more from this investigation. This is a colossal fall from grace for a 3-term governor who, during the pandemic, was frankly seen as America's governor, now in the political fight of his life. Cuomo has been under scrutiny for many months now for his handling of nursing homes during the pandemic, as well as his book deal, and now those scathing allegations of sexual harassment from 11 women. And just to give some context to this report, it was sweeping. It included testimony of those 11 accusers, as well as 107 79 interviews, including an 11-hour interview with the governor himself. Investigators also looking at 74,000 pieces of evidence over the course of 5 months that they'll now hand over to those local DAs. In the end, they concluded that there was a pattern of sexual harassment here. But as you mentioned, so far, Cuomo is defiant. He has said that his public appearances, where you see him in those intimate gestures, they're nothing more than him conveying some sense of warmth to some of his constituents, to other politicians. And he also says that this investigation is biased. He has said that his words have been misinterpreted and that these investigators are weaponizing his daily interactions. Kira?
Well, meanwhile, Ariel, the state assembly speaker, says the governor has lost the confidence of his conference. What happens now? And also, the posse that surrounded him, being loyal to him for quite some time, is shrinking as well.
It sure is, Kira. Essentially, his support among his own party, Democrats, has evaporated. As you mentioned, President Biden now calling on him to resign. We heard him say it outright yesterday and then conveying the same sentiment again today. And more than half of New York Democrats, according to the latest Marist poll, say it's time for Cuomo to go. It is looking more and more like he will be impeached, but perhaps maybe the biggest signal that he is on a political island is, just as you mentioned, the New York Assembly Speaker has said that Cuomo cannot remain in office, and we do know that the Assembly's Judiciary Committee is set to take up the issue of a possible impeachment on Monday. Kira, a lot to go through here.
Indeed, and we'll be following it with you the whole way. Ariel Reshef there in Albany for us. Thank you so much.
Because if I take it, I'm just stealing everything you wrote. That would not be fair. You'd have to charge me for that.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, and my rate's pretty high.
It is.
As serial sexual predators go, Andrew Cuomo is monstrous. That is the inexorable conclusion when you read this 165-page report that is meticulous in its evidence and its detail. The AG said it was overwhelming, persuasive, and compelling, and that the victims were credible and very well corroborated. And it's true when you read this report. But Letitia James, the AG, looked exclusively at federal and state law in the context of civil liability, sexual harassment, retaliation, and hostile work environments. So that means that these victims can now sue Andrew Cuomo and the state of New York in lawsuits for money damages. Primary jurisdiction for crimes rests with the elected district attorney in Albany County, David Suarez, who announced today that he has formally asked the AG to provide all of the documentation and evidence in witness interviews that she collected over 4 long months. What crimes? Well, first of all, forcible touching, Penal Code Section 130.52, which is fondling and groping someone against their will. Another one would be assault and battery, when you lift a woman's blouse without consent against her will. That could constitute assault and battery. And finally, the crime of harassment, placing a woman, or a man for that matter, in fear and trepidation of further aggression. And it's not just Cuomo that's in jeopardy, both civilly and criminally. If his senior staff, and the report says this, were essentially aiding and abetting him, enabling his behavior, and protecting it by covering it up, they could also be in jeopardy.
Tammy Bruce, your thoughts?
Well, I think what's important to realize is that these women came forward, and one of them's already expressed this, that they weren't looking for apologies. They weren't looking to embarrass someone. They want justice, right? 11 women came forward. We know the names of about half of them. I would hazard a guess that there will be more that would come forward, especially with his outrageous performance today. His behavior is patronizing, the smug arrogance in this regard, effectively calling them liars or naive or dumb. It's a very strange dynamic, what he's displaying publicly. But I think that we've got to remember that any other man who would have done these things to a woman in the workplace, when it comes to criminal liability, would have been arrested when a complaint would have been made. And it looks right now like that's an iffy dynamic. It's maybe one case in Albany. And so this is why a lot of women don't come forward, even when it's important, Because literally, I mean, if you're the governor, then maybe the worst thing that happens to you is you lose your job or you have to resign. We've got to be able to take this more seriously, especially for a man in charge of the laws himself, the laws that he signed, the power that he has, not just in his office, but throughout the state. So I think that the Attorney General, more questions are going to be put to her about what's possible, certainly, and hopefully more women will come forward who have been victimized so that this dynamic can proceed.
30 seconds, Greg Jarrett. The video that he brought to his presser today, I do this all the time. Other politicians are also on tape doing it. Well, how would a jury view that?
It will backfire. It doesn't work. His rationalizations are insipid. His excuses are vacuous. What was so offensive was that he blamed the victims and said they are diminishing actual victims of sexual assault. That is such a despicable, detestable comment, but it speaks volumes about Andrew Cuomo.
All right, Greg Jarrett.
Those will start quickly.
I believe my colleagues in the Assembly want to push for immediate impeachment if the governor does not step down, and I believe it will take shape in the next few days.
How long would that last then, that particular proceeding?
Well, I don't think any of us would want to drag this out. The impeachment process and the trial may take up a couple of months, in my opinion, and no one wants to see that, especially at a time when we need leadership, when the pandemic is spreading once again through the Delta variant. We need leaders across the aisle to work together to make sure that we can protect the people of New York. And this governor is an executive without a mandate, and he is a total distraction for all of us.
Well, the Wall Street Journal wrote this in the editorial, the Andrew Cuomo standard, that we're about to find out if Democrats believe what they say about having no tolerance for sexual harassment. If they do, then they have little choice other than to move to impeach Andrew Cuomo as governor of New York. And you've been around the governor for a while. I mean, you've been a critic of his. You know the kind of political machine that he runs. What did you think of his response yesterday and the montage of him basically saying, nothing to see here, rather than owning up to the power dynamics that he has as governor of New York?
4 years ago, we faced serious challenges, and I promised to make progress in all 99 neighborhoods. Today, I am proud of the progress we've made. I was born here at Caraway Hospital. Like Birmingham itself, it has been through some rough years.
It's gaslighting at its best. I want to acknowledge the 11 women who bravely stepped up at a time when our society and culture often do not believe in women. It is up to us as lawmakers to protect their voice, and others who may not be feeling comfortable to step up and speak out against this executive. He broke the law. The top prosecutor in the state of New York had claimed that he broke federal and state laws. We have, as a legislative body, an ethical and a legal duty to remove him from a position of power.
Here is part of that defense that Dana just referred to. That was played out yesterday in his defense.
I do it with everyone. Black and white, young and old, straight and LGBTQ, powerful people, friends, strangers.
This went on for several minutes, and obviously it was pre-recorded, so he had an idea as to what was coming his way. I think we can safely assume that that is the case. If he were to step down, what happens to the investigation on the nursing home deaths during COVID?
Oh, we will continue. I will make sure that my colleagues and I continue to investigate him. But him stepping down is a critical first step, because right now, as long as he's in a position of power, he can leverage public resources, his political capital, to dodge accountability. And at the end of the day, that's what this is about. Impeachment doesn't necessarily equate to accountability, but it removes him from a position of power so we can continue to hold him accountable for the thousands of unnecessary deaths that went under his leadership in the state of New York.
Does he have any supporters in the Democratic Party of New York at this point?
At this point, I can confidently say there are no Democrats at the local, state, or federal level who are supporting or would stand with this governor.
So he stands alone.
He stands alone, an executive without a mandate, with no partners, and a distraction to the public's and the public safety of New York.
Ron Kim, thank you for your time.
Appreciate you.
How his family has been through a lot. What about the victims? And he attacks Charlotte Bennett. This is textbook assaulter blaming the victim. Must impeach immediately. Okay, let's bring our panel back in. Alex, I'll start with you. How do you read this situation?
Well, first of all, I think that the Democrats need to make an example out of Governor Cuomo and end this veil of protection that they have over him. Otherwise, they can absolutely no longer claim to be the party of morals and values and protecting women. I think New York State Democrats must immediately move towards impeachment proceedings against him. And then the Biden administration needs to encourage that. This entire state is a disaster. And I don't know if you know this, but Andrew Cuomo pardoned thousands of convicted child molesters and allowed them to vote. And by the way, guess where they were allowed to vote? At schools. That, combined with the nursing home scandal, this sexual violence evidence, this is all more than enough to put the nail in the coffin on this bozo's career.
Tony, well, I was going to actually go to this. Governor Cuomo first denied the allegations. Listen to this.
First, I want you to know directly from me that I never touched anyone inappropriately or made inappropriate sexual advances. I am 63 years old. I've lived my entire adult life in public view. That is just not who I am. And that's not who I have ever been.
And then he blamed the touching on his cultural upbringing.
Yeah. I've been making the same gesture in public all my life. I actually learned it from my mother and from my father. It is meant to convey warmth, nothing more.
So Tony, first said he didn't do it, then blamed it on generational and cultural differences, then went on to blame it on the biased media, and then called for a full review by a judge and jury.
Yeah, if you want to make the argument it's just a cultural misunderstanding, you can make the argument, but you're not your mother or your father. You're the governor of New York, and do you not have eyes? You have daughters. Do you not know that maybe some things have changed just a touch, and you need to be able to change with them? Or are you such an ineffective leader that you're so stuck in your ways you can't see your way to making a change? But I think what Joe discussed there about the law, I think there's something very interesting here about how Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, has not brought any charges. It's very much reminiscent of James Comey reading off the laundry list about Hillary Clinton, but nobody would really prosecute this case. If Cuomo was a Republican, there would be cameras camped out in front of his house, in front of the office. They would be demanding investigations, etc. That you're going to hear people say, believe all women. But even these 11 women, it's not really enough. That's the story. And the question is, what does the independent or moderate or voter, if to the extent they exist, what do they do with this information? Not only in New York, but in congressional races, in Senate races, in the people they back, I don't know, come 2024.
Okay, the Babylon Bee having some fun with Cuomo, saying this. Experts warn of new Cuomo variant that is dangerous to young women, fatal to elderly. Julio, wrap this up for us.
Damn.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they went after it as a civil matter, to me, is political, because they don't want to give the Republicans an edge. But if you actually look at the stuff that was in the report, it was a very consistent pattern of him asking women why they were in relationships. Would they cheat in those relationships? And the touching and the groping. If you have more than 10, double-digit women giving you the exact same story, then obviously there's probably more than those 10 that probably haven't come out. And it's time, far past time,
for him to be impeached. And listen, he talks about the media going after him. The fact of the matter is he's been protected this entire time. As Tony points out, if he was a Republican, we never would have heard the end of this until he was impeached, convicted, and removed.
Investigation confirms the allegations against Governor Cuomo, then he should resign. So will you now call on him to resign, given the investigator said the 11 women were credible?
I stand by that statement.
Are you now calling on him to resign?
Yes.
And if he doesn't resign, do you believe he should be impeached and removed from office?
Let's take one thing at a time here. I think he should resign. I understand that the state legislature may decide to impeach. I don't know that for a fact. I've not read all that data.
Serial sexual harassment, and the same man accused of galling things like touching women in inappropriate places, using someone's sexual assault experience, and essentially weaponizing it. These are the serious allegations. The thought that he would be designing a new sexual harassment policy, his office under his tenure, he would make New York government the hallmark of addressing sexual harassment. It's just too rich and ironic and hypocritical.
The president has in the past denied any of the allegations from the many women who have accused him of sexual misconduct. But for that podcast today, we suggest the allegations that Tara Reid has raised are more, what do you say, credible than the ones against Brett Kavanaugh. What about the allegations that were raised against him, however? Why should the public, or what makes them any less credible than the allegations from Tara Reid?
The president has swiftly denied all of these allegations that were raised 4 years ago. He has always told the truth on these issues. He's denied them immediately. And you're bringing up issues, like I said, from 4 years ago that were asked and answered, and the American people had their say in the matter when they elected President Trump as president of the United States. But, the media, leave it to the media to really take an issue about the former vice president and turn it on the president and bring up accusations from 4 years ago that were asked and answered in the form of the vote of the American people. People want to hear about issues. They quite frankly don't care about this, certainly not at a 7-to-1 ratio. Is what we see with Media Research Center is the coverage over Donald Trump's sex tapes, allegation, whatever you want to call them, versus the
sexual assault. Let's say the words that we're talking about. When he talks about grabbing a woman's genitals and what fun it is for him because he's a star and he can get away with it, when over a dozen women have come forward with sexual assault allegations, we are talking about sexual assault.
A lot of people are showing mixed emotions. A lot of people showing support for the women, especially the Attorney General. She came out and read the report after she is really, in a way, close to the governor. That's her boss, but she has to do what she has to do to ratify the situation, whether he likes it or not. But the only time will tell. We haven't heard one person, this governor's brother, outspoken brother, Chris Cuomo, host of Cuomo after Prime. So it's really messy, but it's going to get messier from here. And the governor issued that he's not leaving his post, not so yet. So there's a lot going on, but we'll get to the latest. Thank you all for watching this edition of ours. We talk about Governor Andrew Cuomo being accused of having sexual harassment. I've been your host, Kendrick Dick, saying so long. See you next time for another edition of Fire.